Ruben,
Yeah.
can you explain to me something? What is virtual photography?
Ooh, nice question. So this was not rehearsed at all, but
It wasn't.
to us that do this every day, it's taking photos in video games with photo modes or camera tools, and that's it. That's virtual photography for us.
Is it just in video games?
No.
Oh, well, there you
That's
go.
the thing.
That is
That's the thing. For us, for the longest time, I thought that was it. That was everything that virtual photography was.
That's kind of what it's colloquially become known as.
Yeah.
Virtual photography, the popular term, really does relate to, like you say, what we were doing, photo mode, in-game captures.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to just be that, does it? So it's
more than that, for sure.
Or a process analogous to photography, to go back to the copyright documentation, that's not real. So
that's so funny that it's not real.
Not physical, shall we say.
But the not real part, everything becomes sort of like in the Matrix. Like what we are doing, we are.
Ooh, how do you know what's real?
Yeah.
No, we're going to get at least one comment now about we're in the simulation.
I wish we would get that comment. But yeah, like a few years ago, we were discussing this on the Game Photographer show with Lady Snapshot, and she actually came across back then when you Googled virtual photography, the first article that came was one from Adobe, and it was about like photographing your 3D renders and products on a virtual space. That used to be what virtual photography was automatically associated with. But I guess to gamers, it's more like taking in-game photos.
It is. I'm just searching because I had an email from Adobe, and I've stuck because I kept it for this purpose, and that was 2021, so not that old. But this was a webinar, so like a web seminar that they were running, 3D primer in virtual photography, and it says virtual photography is fast emerging as a viable solution for visual asset creation. Now, it's exactly that what you just said. It doesn't have to be in a game. A game is the most popular way of doing virtual photography at the minute, but it can be any virtual asset. So this could be anything that's rendered, basically, and you've got a software camera instead of a physical camera. That's kind of what it all comes down to. So that idea you just said of virtual products or whatever, absolutely, totally viable. That is a real application for virtual photography.
Now that you mention it, like hearing you talk, I connected with Raf Grazetti, the old art director from Santa Monica. He does like renders, 3D renders on Blender from different characters. Like he has a really cool Wolverine one, and then he prints it and sells those. But the print, the moment that the one that he chooses to share, it's a virtual photography.
Of course it is.
Like,
yeah, absolutely.
He is. Yeah.
So he's doing both parts. He's actually rendering the model and then shooting it, essentially. So in Blender, for example, you can create the shape or whatever it is that you're actually wanting to render, and then you position the camera and the lighting. So you position those as rigs, and you've got visualizations of that. Now, photo mods themselves are starting to show the lighting rigs in a similar way.
Yeah.
Because in Blender, you'll see the actual box of light, you'll see the cone, and you can set for the camera as well what sort of focal length and what kind of aperture to create the depth of field.
I never even saw the UI from Blender. I never saw Blender.
It's
even the
actually
logo.
Quite good. You've never seen the logo?
No, I only know the name. And like, I never Googled it, never did anything with Blender.
It's surprisingly easy to pick up to do something simple. I did the first trophy for the VP Awards in Blender in 2 weeks. I just thought, right, within 1 week, I thought, I think I've got enough to go on here. And then I spent another week trying to get something I thought was all right. And I learned all the animations, I learned a little bit of lighting effects, and it was fairly easy to pick up, to be honest. To do it on a really high quality, to get it somewhere near like what Chris has done more recently, would take a lot more experience and different software, to be honest. But yeah, like, that is virtual photography in a totally non-game environment, but it's the same. And to be honest, the skills are quite transferable. If you are good at composing
the lighting,
your camera composition and placing lighting, you could do that in a rendering engine.
Yeah,
You wouldn't be able to do the render yourself, but you can import models and you could do the same thing.
He's not active on Twitter anymore, but really, when I started, I used to talk with It's DG. It was something gamer, the handle, and he would take photos, and then when the PS5 came out and the first lighting of Miles started, he transitioned to Dreams at the same time. It was like for the Dreams patch, and then from Dreams to Blender. And he always said the reason why it was so easy to pick up Blender was the way he composed shots on the virtual photography and the way the light works, because half of that knowledge he already had, and then he just had to learn the rest.
This is probably good support.
Quote unquote.
Just do it. Come on. Anyone who's not done it, just get on with it. What are you
Why aren't you doing it?
This is good support for why anyone who builds a photo mode in a game should try to do it with a consistent behavior. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you make a camera that is realistic and authentic to the way that light behaves in a real camera, and you make lights that behave properly, it's going to be more applicable to rendering engines because they're designed like that. What do you think then about where do you think stuff like the PC tools, or like first before that, maybe we'll talk about people who do, they wouldn't call it virtual photography, but people who do this for a living within the game industry, who do capture art and screenshot art. You typically call it screenshot artist. A capture artist would do moving images as well, so like trailers, clips for trailers.
Yeah, I always have this doubt that when you see an ad for one of these jobs, it always requires you to know how to 3D render.
Yeah, or at least to use the rendering engine.
Yeah, or at least that. And I'm like, that's so much more than what we do. Like, it's you have the knowledge, you have the basics, but that's a step above what we do. And most of us, I think, on the virtual photography community, when we see those ads, we were like, I take photos in some games, I use the photo mode, maybe I can apply. But that right there is so, it's the differentiator between those who can apply or those that will just waste their time.
I agree. A lot of people don't have any consideration for in-engine work at all. They would assume that everything's done. Games didn't used to have photo modes. Photo modes are derived from the industry tools, the in-engine tools that are used for creating promotional media, because that's always been a thing. And then they're making them nice, user-friendly in-game versions of that, essentially. But yeah, there's a bit more to it than simply playing the game and then pausing and take that shot. Now, some like Codemasters, when I spoke to them a couple of years ago, they said people like to see the game. They like to know what the game looks like. So yeah, we actually do use the photo mode now. So
NVIDIA, the NVIDIA artists use the photo modes. They don't allow the tools, the camera tools to be used.
Third-party stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
But going back to the in-engine, if you've got a game that's still
on some games, sorry,
on
some games they don't allow the camera tools to be added.
If the game's still in production, the photo mode might not even be ready. I actually was approached by a company a few months ago for an opportunity. I didn't do it, but that was an in-engine stuff, and I just gave the fair assessment from it. I said I've done a little bit, in Blender. But in terms of using game engines, I've not got that much experience. Yeah. So if you're wanting someone to do that, where it's full scene composition, because you might have to, actually create a scene, place a character, rig the character, pose the character, all of this, I could probably have a go at it, but it's not something I've got existing experience at. Yeah. So they were like, okay, fair enough, and they went elsewhere, which is fine. But they, at the same time, said our consumer photo mode isn't ready yet. So there was the only option there was to do it in engine,
Did the game came out already?
No, it's not out yet.
Okay. Because I was going to ask, does it have a photo mode? But
it should do.
It's not ready.
Whether it will at launch, I don't know.
Yeah.
So there's more to it. But
contrary to popular belief, I don't know everything about what's going on the Ford Focus. Like I saw the post about you launching the YouTube channel.
Yeah, you didn't even reply
competition
to
that. with the Unplugged.
It made me think, why didn't I just do that first and make this part of the Ford Focus channel? I didn't tell anybody before. I actually showed one person the trailer to get some feedback of that before it, and that was it.
And it wasn't me.
It wasn't you, no. Oh, he's betrayed again.
So this was the Photomode Unplugged. It's cancelled now.
Final episode.
Final episode.
You can buy me out. You can buy the
you can watch the rest of the episodes with another host and make on the Ford Focus channel.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens.
Right after we launch the merch.
I'm still doing this.
By the way, patreon.com/Photomode Unplugged, and you can get our merch.
Yeah, link in the description. Oh yeah. Nice mug. But yeah, so on to what then probably is more typically, I think, unless there's any other things. What else is not in game that is virtual photography?
Don't know. Really, I don't think there is. When you put it that anything that you capture that is virtual is considered virtual photography. It's so big, it's so broad that
huge. You probably already see a lot of it without realizing, because product advertisements on TV, if you start to watch and think, oh yeah, that's rendered, especially if you've played around with a rendering engine, you really pick up the tells more. And in magazines, there's no, you might see a trainer, shoe. Would it be a real photograph of a shoe? Sometimes. Is it definitely? No, probably not. Because rendering can look so realistic.
Yeah, most perfumes, I can already tell.
Yeah, exactly.
The perfumes are like, this isn't real.
Yeah. It's actually probably easier for them to do that than it is to get a product photographer set up in a studio and get that product, get every fingerprint off it, get it pristine. Yeah. There's no issues with that.
The right placement of the drips inside the bottle and stuff like that.
They do that with food, and
they do. Yeah,
it's not the actual food, like things that melt. Or
have you seen those videos where they don't use
Squirty cream.
cream. They don't use it. They use
Shaving foam.
shave foam, and it looks more tasty.
Exactly. Yeah.
Stuff like that. I'm like, they put cardboards between every ingredient on an hamburger for a photo.
Yeah.
So they stay in place and make it taller. And I'm like, my life is a lie.
Yeah.
My life.
Yeah. Even real photography is a bit of a trick a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But now you'll see a lot of products are just done virtually because perfume is a perfect example. You can just get someone with a computer to do it.
You probably know this better than I do. Cars. Is someone like driving by and you are taking the photo, or are you rendering?
Again, you will see both. If you see a new car design, like the first time it's shown, you will often see renders. But that's what I was going to say before. The renders can be so realistic. It's something that games are not quite able to achieve because inherently a game is meeting a frame rate. So they're limited on their assets and everything for the game. That's the determining factor. There's no reason why the Photomode itself couldn't let you up that, but invariably they don't. In a product render, if it takes you an hour to render one frame, so what? To them, it's worth that because you don't need a moving, you need to keep up with the game or anything. But yeah, you definitely see a lot of rendered car shots. But then when they're in magazine reviews and stuff, they're genuine. Okay. Yeah. So you do see both, but like the original advert, probably not real.
We really live in the Matrix.
You could say, does it make you feel like you're in a simulation yet?
To answer your question, I think that's about it. Now it's in-game photography, and what part of it is virtual photography and what part of it isn't virtual photography?
First of all, I would probably say that some of it comes down to just naming, and some of it is exclusionary, if you want, as in doesn't count. So
I was pulling towards this. Yeah. Oh,
virtual photography I consider as a broader digital art form. Yeah. Okay. In-game photography is a type of virtual photography. Screenshot art is a different name for the same thing.
Yeah.
I think the mistake that can be made is that if you just say screenshot art, you're just assuming that you're literally playing the game and pressing screenshot with no further composition.
Yeah.
Which brings me to the thing that doesn't count. Now this would be look at this. Cutscene photography. Yeah. So a cutscene has been created by the studio artists. Yeah. The gameplay is free to change, but a cutscene is a predefined sequence that you will see exactly the same every time. And that's their art. So if you just take a screenshot of a cutscene, that is not virtual photography.
But what if I apply a filter to it? What if I change the colors? What if I change the contrast? What if I change everything but the composition?
That would end up in the greyish area. For me, I would still advise not to do any of that. I mean, if you want to do it and just keep it for your own entertainment, whatever. But for me, it requires some originality of the composition. That's the key thing. An example I always try and give, if you just take the screenshot of a cutscene, it's a copy. It's as simple as that. It's a copy. And all right, you might say that changing the colours is adding something, but it's not really adding a huge creativity to it. If you were to take a book, a novel, let's say you take Lord of the Rings, and you write it out by hand in calligraphy, you can have the fanciest font you want. It's still Lord of the Rings. It's not your book. And it's a copy. and you don't own the copyright to Lord of the Rings by writing it in calligraphy.
There is a really cool web series. I think everyone can watch it for free, called Everything is a Remix. And it changed my perspective about a lot of things, because like there's a whole section about how Disney uses classic folklore to create their and stuff like that, and they remix it just enough that it's theirs, and then there are people that don't remix enough, and it's a cover, it's a tribute. And I think that's the thing about screenshotting a cutscene and changing all those aspects that isn't composition. It's a tribute. It's something really cool, but you are not creating anything.
No.
You are just remixing that already exists.
And invariably, people take the cutscene shot because it looks great.
Yep.
And you're still taking advantage of the inherent quality of the art. That it's another reason actually why I don't do that much sort of distant scenery photography, because you can't really change much about it. It can be just a background and it looks the same for everybody. You know, you're just stood over here and you go, wow, doesn't it look amazing over there? Yeah. It does. But that was the environment artist that
Patrick Berdo did a breakdown on how he takes screenshots on The Last of Us Part 2 back when the game came out. And when it came time for environmental shots, he gave the perfect example of, this is something like you're walking around, you see this beautiful landscape. That's not a cutscene, but it's something that the creators put together, that everyone enters this section of the game and sees exactly what you're seeing.
It's the original presentation of it.
So putting the character there and taking a photo, it's your photo. You are still creating a composition right there, but why not do a different angle than the one that you just entered? Why not use something to frame the whole thing or stuff like that? Like, I like to see creative remixes. I really do. Like when people say, oh, I have a photo that is really similar to yours, is it okay if I post? First of all, of course. Like, I don't
similar,
care.
fine. I've
Second
stolen
of all,
yours.
that's not cool. Don't do it. But I really like to see different interpretations of the same moment. Of you have that thing where when you see an NPC that looks really cool, you are like, everyone is going to photograph this.
The one in Survivor, the bounty hunter, exactly. You just think, there's going to be tons of shots of that. So don't take the obvious one. That's what I always think. Don't take the obvious shot.
And I love that. I love, like, it's a cool NPC. I can't wait to see every single interpretation of this scene right here that we are experiencing. But if you just press photo mode, move the camera behind and take the photo, still commendable. You at least didn't just press the share button. But it's what the artist that created that scene wanted you to see. So you're kind of doing the same. It's not the same as cutscene photography, but it's close enough for me, at least.
So, if you were to, let's say at the gallery that you had on in Portugal, so someone comes over, they don't know what it's all about, and they ask you, what's this virtual photography all about? Now, you are going to tell it in a game context now. You're not going to say, oh, by the way, you might want to be aware of product photography. Let's say we want to explain to someone what is in-game photography all about. How would you define it in a way that makes them understand that it's about the composition?
Usually when I have to explain to anyone, because I get that a lot, where with coworkers, for example, every time that someone new comes over, and we are having a ton of new coworkers, to explain is like having a camera on your game. You pause, you walk around with your camera, it's like pausing time, and you can take the photo whatever you want, and you edit the photo on your camera. You adjust the filters, you adjust everything. That's usually how I explain. And when people have that click, that, oh, that's really cool. Like in Lisbon, when I did the gallery, I explained it like this to a photographer that had her photos posted on magazines. She went to Australia conventions to talk about it. And when it clicked with her that what I was doing is what she does, or similar to what she does in the real world, but she was like, wait, games can do that?
Yeah.
That's how?
I love seeing that moment of realization when people are interested but didn't yet know about it. You're like, oh, and suddenly the reams of possibilities that are going in their mind. You're like, imagine this. I take the same approach. It's just like, you describe that while you're playing, it just looks normal, and then you pause, and then you're able to freely move around, and you've got this camera with all the settings that are the same as what you'd get on a real camera. So you've got your focal length, you've got your aperture, and just list them all off like that. And
do you get the? I got that sometimes. Why would you pause your game so much? I get that.
No.
And I'm like, I don't know, because I like pretty pictures, because I like what I do. Like, do you take photos with your phone when you go traveling? Okay, when I go playing, I do the same. I'm always like trying to capture everything.
Yeah, I've never been asked that. I actually also haven't had recently, and ages ago I used to get this more. Just say, oh, so it's just a screenshot then. That seems to have gone away now. I don't get that very much now. I think people are much more aware.
When I started, it was around the same time that me and Danny started to our proper jobs, instead of like only studying and having gigs. And she was there for about 3 months when I got first notice, and she was commenting with her boss what I did, and he was like, he took the phone, took a screenshot with the phone, and said basically, your boyfriend does this. And it's like, no,
not quite. No, if it was a cutscene shot, then yes.
Yeah.
But I've taken recently to just showing an example. I've got 2 pictures. I might edit them in, depending on how much time I think I fancy having. It's from The Last of Us. It's just, here's the game as it was. Well, the moment I entered photo mode, and then here's the result. You've probably seen the picture. It's the real close up of Abby's eyes looking through a slit.
You
show that.
Shared exactly.
Did I do that? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I show those 2. I've got them together on my phone just to show someone who you think they're not really understanding the gaming element. You just show them, here's what a game normally looks like, and here's what you can end up with. And they're like, oh, wow, it's so different. That's just the easiest thing, is to demonstrate it, to be honest. Yeah.
If you ever like have a video of it, I think it's the best way to, like those really fast videos on TikTok or Reels.
Yeah, because it shows more of the process.
I shared those with people when I did the gallery, and still they didn't understand because they are so fast.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, they're actually too fast to understand.
But if you have one of yours that you didn't edit to be super fast,
but not too long,
that might,
So, virtual photography in a video in-game photography context is, we shall say, something that gives you freedom to compose. So more than a screenshot, definitely not just a cutscene. By the way, you can have virtual photography of a cutscene if you've got free camera in the cutscene. That's still
as long
fair
as
game.
You can move. I think to the very basic of it is, if you can have a camera and move that camera. That's virtual photography.
Yeah.
Which leads me to, what about Resident Evil 8? I think you are moving the camera, just not in the photo mode. You are creating your.
You can't.
You're creating your composition.
You're creating the composition by walking around.
Yeah.
It's just a very poor implementation. But you can still choose to go anywhere. It's not a pre-defined shot, so I think it does still count. It's just a really bad example.
Yeah.
A really bad example.
It's still the worst photo mode.
Or camera tools is perfectly viable as well. So games don't always have photo modes. You are unlikely to have access to the in-engine stuff. But if you can use third-party stuff, again, to just give you often more control over the camera than even with the photo mode, that is entirely the same thing. You might see some people just calling things differently. You mentioned gametographers before, so gametography was the thing. I always tried to push against that. I was like, I don't like the word.
I like the word because it's silly and it takes the seriousness out of.
Fair enough. Yeah.
I've said it before. I think virtual photographers, for the most part, are really self-aware and grumpy and like, oh, my photos are, I'm such an artist and stuff like that. And gametography, the word, the silliness of it all, it gives it takes off the edge out of that part.
One thing some people occasionally have said, oh, should we call it digital photography? No, because that exists. That's a digital camera sensor.
I had such a bad time in Portugal because so many people tell, oh, this is Ruben, also known as .pon, a digital photographer. And I'm like, not to be an asshole, but I tend to correct everyone because it's like, I want people to be aware that things have names and they should. Like, you taking a photo with your phone, that's digital photography.
Exactly. Yeah. I would correct that. I don't correct things all the time. I very rarely correct people who don't call me doctor, for example. My title is doctor, but if people say Mr. Bromley, I don't bother with that. Maybe occasionally for humor, for someone who does know about a PhD, but I would never do that to someone who didn't know me because that's just arsey, isn't it? I
am rewatching all of modern Doctor Who, so I would for sure correct everyone. Please call me Doctor. Everyone, Doctor.
Fair enough. Yeah. You mentioned about smartphone thing, so because earlier you said about the differentiator of photo mode to in-engine stuff. You could consider as well, like a smartphone is kind of entry-level photography or a compact camera, and then you've got high-end cameras which are a lot more technical to use. Something that professional photographers will always do, though, and I mean always do, is edit their shots. So do you consider the editing process to be part of...
we have a whole episode about it. A whole episode. We have a whole episode
really?
About
but not everyone's
shots.
seen every episode.
They should.
So
that's what you do with podcasts. You go to the first one and you listen to it all. By the way, don't do that. Always start with the most recent one.
Yes, but the thing is, anyone who's going to do that will never see this because they say, "Oh,
they are watching the first episode."
I just need to catch up with the other 38. No, just do it now.
Just watch the most recent one. Yeah. We don't care about those old stuff. That's old us. Old us would.
Yeah, Christmas gifts 2022 does not matter anymore. Forget it.
Well, it might translate to Christmas gift.
We'll do a new one.
We would just say the same things.
No,
and I still think that's our lowest episode.
Oh, well.
So we won't do a new one.
Well, we might do. Anyway, is editing part of the virtual or the in-game?
For sure.
I agree.
I think even the tools that we use in the photo modes are already editing. Like you change exposure, you change contrast, you change sometimes saturation, sometimes vibrancy, sometimes even if you put a filter on it and you change the intensity, you are editing. So what's the difference of... One thing is, if your main goal with virtual photography is to be shared by studios, by the developers, okay, they might not like that you are tinkering with the game, and that's okay. You are keeping it clean so that you are shared by the studios. But if your goal is just to put out photos of the game, why aren't you editing? Why aren't you...
And to be honest, even if you are aiming for the studio, you can still make it look its best, because every single time anyone asks me this, I say, you're sat in a dark room at night with a 55-inch TV blaring out massive brightness, and you take that shot and you can see all the shadow detail, put it on your phone in the daytime, and all of a sudden you can't see any of that detail in the blacks. So you've got to consider different screens. There might be a little bit of the wrong color. I hate pervasive greens, like really dingy, dark greens, and you get that a lot in games. I take the green saturation out, and it cleans it up. It cleans up the shadows a lot. And like you said, that's not really any different to choosing a filter that's in the photo mode. And anyone saying, oh, you shouldn't do that because it's not in the photo mode. Yeah, but that game has a feature that's not in the other game. So should you not use that? Of course you should use it. Use what's there.
If it's not on the photo mode, it should be.
Yeah, well, but guess what? Virtual photography isn't just photo modes. So there you go. There is a point, though, when it becomes something different, where you would maybe call it digital art. And that is when you're, say, taking lots of different elements and making a composite image.
Stitching them together, having characters from one photo put in another photo, stuff like that.
Stacking layers of stuff. And you can do it in Reshade even. You can import background assets. Yeah. That's arguably still virtual photography, though, because you're still doing it all virtually at the time.
It is. It's just not in-game photography. You are using Reshade.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, exactly. So that just shows how broad a spectrum. Virtual photography for me is the broadest umbrella of this art, and a photo mode is just one form of it in in-game photography. But yeah, if you're starting to do even like digital drawings, you might take a photo mode capture as a reference,
inspiration,
and then illustrate it digitally or even draw it.
Saroki, she does that a lot. Like take a photo in the photo mode and do drawings, or take a photo in the photo mode and do toy photography. So she places the toys in the same pose, tries to put out the lights, like the light on her phone. She uses candy wraps to do the colors. She does that. Okay, the toys part. Okay, not virtual photography. It's actual photography. Real, it's real, but the drawings, taking inspiration, it might still be considered. I would
say they're derivative art. But
it's like a fusion, taking the best of both and just creating something cool.
Yeah, and it is cool. Virtual photography is cool.
Kids.
So subscribe, etc.
That was perfect.
And don't miss the Fourth Focus YouTube channel coming this year.
Bye.